gather round people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, or the times they are a-changing.
You know, it only occurred to me at this very moment that it's the second time this week, in fact, the second time in 3 days, that I have chosen Bob Dylan to start the show on Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday. I played some Bob Dylan to start the show because the band that was playing at the pub we enjoyed some time in on Monday night when we got to Flint was playing some Bob Dylan. Today, though, it is because it was on this day in 1964 that Dylan made his first appearance on the UK music charts with that song right there, The Times They Are A-Changin'. And I thought how apropos on this day in 64, that song charts for the first time. As we know, Bob Dylan wrote that song deliberately to create an anthem of change for the times. Do you think on this day in 2025, the times, they are a-changin'? The times seem to be a-changin' every ding-dang day, don't they? It is 6 minutes after 9 on your Thursday morning. Thank you very much for stopping by, spending some of your time with us. Really appreciate that. And love to have the company while we're on the road with the Kitchener Rangers. It's game day, baby. Game day. And the Rangers will take on the Firebirds tonight. You'll hear that game right here on 570 News Radio. Paul Fixter and I will be on the air with pregame coverage starting at 6:30. And then we'll come back home right after the game to be with you tomorrow night at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium for Game 5 in this series. Will the Rangers have a 3-1 lead? Will it be a 2-2 series when we come back? That's to be determined tonight. But I know this much. I know this much for sure. I have a couple of pairs of tickets, 2 pairs of tickets to give away to that game tomorrow night at the Memorial Auditorium. Not right this second, but during the show today. And we'll see how it goes, but probably before 9:30 today, before 10 for sure, we'll give away one of those pairs of tickets. I promise you. I got a couple of pairs to give away, and we want to make sure that you can join us for the big Game 5 at the Memorial Auditorium tomorrow night. Have you ever wondered, honestly, what an HE double hockey sticks we're doing in this country? And I don't mean that. I'm not trying to get too serious on you here, okay? I'm not getting too political yet. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about our country being broken or anything like that. But what the HE double hockey sticks was with the last 24 hours of weather. I mean, we've basically had, a 20-degree swing in temperature. We got snow. We got freezing rain. We got thunder. What on earth are we doing in this godforsaken place with this godforsaken weather? Oh, yeah, because we like the country, right? Overall, it's a pretty good place to hang out. But goodness gracious me, that was a little bit much for my old bones yesterday. Beautiful sunshine here in Flint. I know you're getting over that fog advisory back home, but clearer skies and warmer temperatures are on the way. Let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning.
It's the final countdown.
All right, number 1 on that Farwell Show 5 this morning. Liberal leader Mark Carney meeting today with Canada's premiers to discuss U.S. President Donald Trump's latest tariffs. Carney is expected to deliver his response to those duties after meeting virtually with provincial and territorial leaders this morning at 10. Now, Ontario Premier Doug Ford says with Canada being left off this latest list of countries to be hit with reciprocal tariffs, we should not retaliate, but instead strengthen our existing relationship. Number 2, Conestoga College has laid off some administrative staff, with more job losses still anticipated. Staff at the school say they were informed of the layoffs in an email from President John Tibbetts, who just received a $140,000 raise. According to the Ministry of Labor, if less than 50 employees are let go at any given time, the institution does not have to publicize who was let go and how many jobs were trimmed. So at this point, we presume it was fewer than 50. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Town Bowl in Kitchener is getting a new lease on life. The longtime bowling alley on Ottawa Street is becoming the new home of soccer-based business, the Sports Link. Renovations on the building are expected to start next month. Town Bowl closed in 2023 after more than 60 years in business. The Sports Link had been operating out of a building on Ontario Street, which is now up for sale, and leasing some other space in the city. Number 4, the Waterloo Catholic District School Board has become the second major institution in the region to drop the use of X. The board cites an increasingly negative tone on the social media platform as part of the reason for its decision. The city of Cambridge made headlines earlier this year for also abandoning X. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, for the 9th straight year, the Toronto Maple Leafs have clinched a playoff spot. The Leafs earning that spot with a 3-2 win over Florida last night. The only thing missing in this for me is a chance to play some AM on AM in the AM for you. But AM, Austin Matthews did not score one of those 3 Leafs goals. It's all right. The Leafs are going back to the playoffs. And by the way, please don't even remind me that the team that shall not be named is also in a wild card spot right now. Don't care. Can't make me care. Or don't remind me either that Alex Ovechkin scored another goal last night and is now within 3 goals of passing Wayne Gretzky for the most regular season goals in NHL history. Like, it's going to have an asterisk, right? Most goals is most goals, period. That guy is not going to pass Gretzky's most goals, period. Anyway, I don't want to talk about any of those other things, but I did want to remind you that the Leafs are in the playoffs, baby. Playoffs. When I was getting ready for the show, Paul Fixter was giving me a hard time because he came downstairs. I get up a little earlier to get my prep work done. He comes downstairs. Hey, did the Leafs win last night? I said, oh, you better believe they won last night. We're going to the playoffs, baby. And Fixie just rolls his eyes at me and says, oh, yeah, so now the Leafs are going to win the Stanley Cup, right? Boy, you got to hate on us Leafs fans, huh? Anyway, that's your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning. I will take a break. When we come back, one of our guests yesterday said something that left a lasting impression on me. It's something that I've been frustrated by for quite some time. Now there's a number to back it up and, quite frankly, make me a little bit more frustrated. But I'm just wondering this, and I know it's not the most popular idea because not everybody loves the way it's playing out in the United States. But couldn't we do with some sort of Department of Government efficiency on this side of the border? I'll tell you why I think so coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. All right, if you've listened to this show for more than a minute, you have probably heard me talk before about the concern I have, frankly, with how much government costs us. Look, I am, and I will insist on this until my last breath, I'm okay with paying taxes. In fact, I'm even okay with the way we sometimes use the language or advocate for that language to be used, that these are not taxes and onerous things to be complained about. These are investments in our community. I'm okay with being a part of that collective. I really am. When I get frustrated is when it seems to me that we do not necessarily, no, we don't. We do not always appear to use those investments wisely. It is one of those things where we're wondering, where does this money go? Why was it being spent on that? And one of the places that we know it's being spent, certainly in Canada now, is on the size of our federal civil service. We have a massive bureaucracy. It got bigger and bigger under Justin Trudeau over the past 9, 10 years. And you have to ask yourself the serious question: are we getting value for what we're paying for? I think a government's job is to incentivize, create the conditions that allow people to create jobs. I don't think the government should, in and of itself, be a job creating machine. That's just the way I look at it. And I think over time, we have kind of fallen into that trap a little bit. So yesterday, we had Tom Korski on the show. Tom is the managing editor with the Blacklocks Reporter. And he left me with a little tidbit that I'd been stewing on through the day. Here's what Tom said on the show yesterday.
My favorite statistic. Do you know how many federal managers there are? They're called executive group. This is six-figure salaries on the bottom rung. On the top rung, you get a chauffeur and a car. There's 10,060 federal managers. The payroll cost has literally gone up by $1 billion in the last 10 years. You're trying to think, who has 10,000 executives? Would that be not Google, surely, not Canadian Pacific Railway? I'm thinking the Russian Army, would they have 10,000 executives? But that's how many there are in the government of Canada.
10,000 executives who have cost us $1 billion. Again, if I'm making investments in my community so that we have hospitals, we have roads, we have schools, we have cleaner air, if I'm making those investments in my community, am I making those investments to employ 10,000 managers? I know we have a vast landmass in this country. It's a big country, okay? But 10,000 managers seems like enough bureaucracy to continue getting in one another's way. And if we didn't have 10,000, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but I will. Would half of those managers be missed if they were no longer there managing whatever it is they're being paid, and paid handsomely to manage? As you might expect, here in Flint, where I am again today, on this side of the border, every television in the lobby, every television in the restaurant that we were visiting through the day was tuned into the news here from the White House when Donald Trump announced those tariffs. And so it's wall-to-wall news coverage here about that. And one of the other stories that I was following yesterday, because the news coverage was so extensive, was of one of the federal employees in the United States who had been fired, and some video that went viral with a senator saying this individual probably deserved to be fired. And this senator said right to the fired employee, "You seem like a clown. You probably deserved to be fired." And I heard that senator interviewed, and his assertion was that this person who had been let go couldn't even adequately describe the job that they did. I don't know. This is just what the senator said in the interview. I don't know the individual or the job that he had. But I wonder if we were to say to 10,000 managers in this country with our federal civil service, what exactly are the details of the work that you do? What goes on over a 24-hour period, or an 8-hour, 7.5 hour, whatever the work day is for that particular employee? And I know, I'm getting into Elon Musk territory here, and that is not the most popular person on the planet. But in that conversation we had with Tom Korski yesterday, when he left me with that little tidbit, I turned it around and connected it to our sunshine list, which I don't love generally in Ontario. I think it needs to be updated a little bit. I think it just gives us some salary envy. But when you think about the president of Conestoga College, for example, who not only gets a 29% raise, a 29% year over year raise, but that 29% is equivalent to more than $140,000 There are a lot of people in this community today that are making about a third of that every year. That was his raise for 1 year. And that's a provincially, publicly funded job, which means those of us making one third of that salary, the raise in that salary, are helping to pay for the overall salary of more than $630,000. It just doesn't add up to me. And then Steve gave us a call and shared his thoughts on the sunshine list.
As long as the average Joe doesn't receive much of a pay raise like they have over the last decade, I'd say keep it $100,000 so that everyone else can see all the people on that sunshine list who are mostly paid from the public purse or in a job where they're supposed to be managing the public purse. I say keep it at 100,000, and we can see the disparity growing and growing and growing.
There is certainly a disparity between the public sector and the private sector, and the gap continues to widen. I'm just like, tell me honestly. I know it's got a bad reputation, and the person running it in the States is not the most popular person. But is a Department of Government Efficiency really such a bad idea? Not from the numbers I'm seeing from where I'm sitting. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Game day, baby. We have ourselves a Kitchener Rangers game day. And because of that, we are going to give away some Kitchener Rangers tickets on the show today. In the next 30 minutes, you will get your chance as we continue our series of shows from the road here in Flint, where the Rangers are playing tonight. You will hear Paul Fixter and I on the air from the Dort Financial Center at 6:30 with pregame coverage for tonight's Game 4 between the Rangers and Firebirds. I'll tell you something, the off days on the road can get pretty long. There's a lot of downtime on those days, but we managed to fill it pretty well, and it's a good thing we all get along as well as we do. But we're looking forward to coming home after the game tonight. And then Game 5, which will be necessary in this series, is tomorrow night in Kitchener. That's the game I will give you the chance to win tickets for in the next 30 minutes. So make sure you've got a clear enough calendar that you can make Game 5 at the Memorial Auditorium tomorrow night, and we'll set you up with a pair of tickets before 10 this morning. Off to the 570 News Center we go for an update, and then let's talk tariffs, particularly their impact on the automotive sector. That's coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, here in the United States, as you can expect, I'm sure it was the same back home, it was wall-to-wall coverage yesterday of what was happening at the White House when Donald Trump announced reciprocal tariffs against dozens of countries around the world. And I guess in Canada, we breathe a bit of a sigh of relief because along with Mexico, we're being left off that lengthy list of countries facing these reciprocal tariffs, but that doesn't change those tariffs that are already in place on steel, aluminum, and automobiles. Abdallah El Sayed is an associate professor of engineering at the University of Guelph and joins us for a conversation. Abdallah, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for making time to share your expertise with us, because while I think there is some sense of relief, we have to remember the impact, particularly on the automotive sector. And I wonder how we even begin to unpack this when, we hear things like, well, if parts of that vehicle are American made, those particular parts won't be subject to tariffs. How do we begin to react to this within our automotive industry?
Yeah, I think it's first understanding how it's being applied, because some of the, I read, the news just like you, and then some of the definitions on how this parts, what's considered an American part, what's considered a Canadian part, especially when you have aluminum from Quebec making an engine block in the US, then it's heat treated in Canada, then machined in the US. Is it a Canadian part? Is it an American part? This kind of complicates things. And then also Now we'll see how kind of the market reacts and how the prices change. I think, it was midnight last night that the auto tariff came in. So these companies can't change on a dime. So I think right now in the immediate term, you'll see a higher price on the vehicle. Possibly it'll be start changing some minds on where to put in new assembly plants or to new production, but those things don't happen overnight. It takes time.
New assembly plants, new production. I have to think, Abdallah, that what Donald Trump thinks is going to happen here is that jobs and production will be repatriated, if you will, to the United States. But that also can't happen overnight.
No, absolutely. Yes, yeah. So some of these decisions to make these new plants or to where to new production should be put in or maybe reduce somewhere else takes time to implement and time to enact. And then also you have sometimes multiple plants making the same thing. So, you have your Ford, you're making wiring harnesses or you need wiring harnesses for your vehicles. You have a plant in Canada making the same part as the one in the US, as the same part in the one in Mexico, and they could be three different suppliers. It gives you leverage on flexibility of maybe increasing production in one spot here versus another spot here. If you have a snowstorm in one place or a tornado in another, now you could kind of shift production around. So it gives you some flexibility. So you might need all three. So to try to kind of say, oh, we're going to not take from the Canadian and Mexican plant and just take from the American one, they now have to maybe triple their production. And then that's not easy to do on a dime. And then who knows what happens the next month or the next year. You maybe put in this investment to increase your production, and then next year things change, and so you have to scale back again. It's very turbulent and it's very difficult to deal with. So sometimes you don't want to make these huge costly changes and then have to renege very soon after. Yeah.
How do you see these costly changes impacting our economy?
Yeah, so I think I was just listening in right before me coming on that the Stellantis plant now is shut down for 2 weeks, right? So the production plants typically run very lean. They only have parts for a few days, maybe a week or so. So now if the immediate change happens, they don't have enough parts to kind of maybe continue production for very long. So sometimes the most cost-effective thing is to kind of just stop and wait and sit idle. So I think in some plants or some manufacturers, they're going to decide that production of minivans in one place should stop for the time being before they decide to maybe move it to somewhere else or just kind of wait and see and think of what to do.
Do you anticipate that we will see job losses in the automotive sector in Canada if this continues?
Yeah, I'm not an economist, so I wouldn't be for sure. But higher prices and things like lack of parts or more increased cost parts, the prices usually go to the consumer. If the consumer is not buying in, if they're not kind of now absorbing this cost because they're saying, I wanted to buy a car, but now it's an increased price, I can't afford it anymore. You didn't need that assembly worker on the line to put together that vehicle now because now it's an unsold vehicle. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are some job cuts and job losses. And then usually we only think of the ones on the assembly line. When we see videos on the news, it's usually the person putting the tires in or the vehicle is almost complete. There are many, many steps way before that in the parts suppliers and then in the design stages that working in offices. So we usually kind of see the assembly line part, but then I hear there's sometimes 5 or 6 people for every person on the assembly line. So it's a huge infrastructure and a huge chain.
And when we start to look at the length of that chain that you just referred to, Abdallah, how interconnected is the automotive industry both in Canada and the United States? How closely tied are we?
Yeah, it's this is an industry that has been built over decades. And that border, that short border, especially kind of you call the Rust Belt in the Northeast US, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and then Ontario, Quebec. That region is very easy to transport goods, very easy to transport manpower and then also items. So it was very convenient and very it made a lot of sense to kind of have a very close relationship. And so now you had this infrastructure that was built over decades like this. So to try to kind of now draw a very sharp line with tariffs between it is really disruptive.
How many times might we see a part traveling back and forth across the border, and then I presumably being tariffed every time?
Yeah, so yeah, this is another point that's I kind of think still not very clear to me, or I haven't kind of I wanted to look at a little more in details to try to find some clarification if there is multiple tariffs for something that goes back and forth over the border. But kind of to give you an example for engine block in an industry where I used to work in making engine blocks, so you'd have aluminum coming from, it could be coming from Quebec. Part of it was also recycled material from the US or Canada. So now you have this kind of mixed metal in Canada to make the engine block. And then it could be heat treated in Canada or heat treated in the US. Then it could be machined in Canada. Then it could be a final machining in the US and then assembled in Canada. So now putting on the starter and belts and other parts of the transmission, and then put it into an assembly plant in the US. So this was maybe 5 or 6 times going back over the border. Yeah. And so that was for an engine block. So many other parts are similar to this as well, too.
It's really great to get your perspective on the show today. Abdallah, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Abdallah El Sayed is an associate professor of engineering at the University of Guelph, joins us to talk about what the American president is calling Liberation Day and what we are describing much differently on this side of the border. So here we are. Surprised in any way by what you heard from Donald Trump yesterday? We continue the conversation on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
The immediate change happens, they don't have enough parts to kind of maybe continue production for very long. So sometimes the most cost-effective thing is to kind of just stop and wait and sit idle. So I think some plants or some manufacturers, they're going to decide that production of minivans in one place should stop for the time being before they decide to maybe move it to somewhere else or just kind of wait and see and think of what to do.
Abdallah El Sayed is an associate professor of engineering at the University of Guelph, joins us to talk about the impact of those auto tariffs on our Canadian economy and some perspective on how often, and I think we're learning more and more about this in recent weeks, right? How often parts, for example, can be passing back and forth across the border, presumably then being tariffed each and every time they do that. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. How would you like to see Canada respond to this? Liberal leader Mark Carney meeting in the next 15 minutes or so virtually with provincial and territorial premiers in this country to talk about a response. And you heard Ontario Premier Doug Ford during All News Mornings with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas talking about strengthening the relationship and this AmCan fortress for Canada and the United States, as opposed to retaliating, which is something that Mark Carney has suggested he's interested in doing. Retaliation is the direction that he would like to take. And look, I'm neither an economist nor a world leader who is trying to deal with this on the global stage. But it seems to me that if we talk about the implementation of these tariffs and the impact that it will have on the U.S. economy, by extension, if or when we retaliate, doesn't that have an increasingly negative impact on our economy? I understand the appeal and maybe even the necessity of retaliating. But if and when that happens, doesn't it make it even worse? These tariffs are going to hurt the Canadian economy as it is, but aren't we going to deepen that negative impact through retaliation? Because, again, we're already talking about the negative impact this is going to have on the U.S. economy, at least in the short term. Long term, I think we understand the long play here, right? Let's bring jobs, let's bring production back to America. But how long does that take? Certainly, I would submit to you it takes longer than the 4 years that Donald Trump is going to be in office, unless, of course, he finds a way to make it another 4 years after that and work into a third term, which is a story that has got legs and legitimate legs. These conversations happening with Donald Trump already speculating or giving thought to ways that he could have a third term in office. Regardless, it's not going to happen overnight. You can't build a manufacturing facility overnight. You can't retool overnight, whatever it takes. Yes, I know they want production and they want jobs back in America, but it's not going to happen in a hurry. Something else that really caught my attention in following the news here yesterday, as these tariffs were being introduced, there was an automotive dealer. So a car dealership in, I believe it was Indiana, that was speaking. Regardless, this gentleman who sold a very popular vehicle said, we sell this vehicle today for $30,000. And with these tariffs, that means that the price of that vehicle goes up by $7,500 overnight. And that puts the price of that vehicle out of reach for so many of the people living in our community. And he broke it right down to the payments that would be made. Your biweekly payment would go up by $175. He said, we live in a very middle class community here. And people aren't going to be able to absorb that kind of an increase in the payment for their vehicle. So what does that mean? That means the inventory sits on my lot and people in my community are not buying this vehicle anymore because it's suddenly overnight out of their price range. That was one person's perspective as interviewed on the news coverage I saw about this yesterday. It's going to hurt the American economy. And I can't wait. I can't wait to hear the spin that the US president puts on that when the economic impact starts to be felt. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, who would like to go and see the Kitchener Rangers play the Flint Firebirds tomorrow night at the Memorial Auditorium? I got a couple of pairs of tickets to give away on the show today. I'll give away that first pair after this. And look, we're getting into the important games here. It's playoff time, right? So we're gonna step it up a notch for Game 5, okay, to win those tickets. Instead of really easy Rangers trivia, it is Rangers playoff trivia. I'm not going to say the questions will be the hardest questions, but they'll be a little tougher than the really easy ones. You know what I'm saying? If you can answer our Rangers playoff trivia question, then you can have a pair of tickets to tomorrow night's game. You want to play Rangers playoff trivia with us? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. First come, first served. Rangers playoff trivia for your chance to win a pair of tickets to tomorrow night's game here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a game day, baby. We've got the Rangers and Firebirds tonight here in Flint. Game 4 of their first round playoff series. Kitchener leads the series 2-1. So obviously, we are hoping that when the game is done tonight, the Rangers will lead this playoff series 3-1. But you need to win 4 to win a series, right? That means we're coming home for Game 5 tomorrow, and I've got a pair of tickets to give away right now. 519-570-2545, star 570. 1-800-570-5715. Bob is with us to play Rangers playoff trivia this morning. Bob, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
You ready for your good morning? I got you, my friend. You want to go see that game tomorrow night?
I really do, yes.
Okay. I really want you to go see that game tomorrow night. It's a playoff game, so we're playing Rangers playoff trivia for those tickets this morning. If you answer the question, okay. You answer this question correctly, we send you to the game tomorrow night. Simple, right?
Okay, great.
Okay, Bob, here's your question. What team did the Rangers beat in the first round of the playoffs last season?
Was it
Come on.
London?
Oh, Bob. I wish it was, but that is not the answer. I'm sorry.
All right. Thanks a lot. Sorry about that.
Thanks. No problem, Bob. Thanks for playing. Appreciate it. Let's go next to Dave. Dave has a chance to win those playoff tickets. Dave, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to ask you the same question. You had maybe more time to think about it if you heard it. What team did the Rangers beat in the first round of the playoffs last year?
Owen Sound.
Oh, Dave, I'm sorry that's not the answer I was looking for. It's not the answer at all, in fact. Sorry, Dave. Thanks for playing along. Are we going to get one more in, Dev? What do you think? Let's try it. We're going to try just before the 10 o'clock news. Can we get the answer to the question and award those tickets to tomorrow night's game? Let's try. We've got a David on the line with us now. David, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you tell me, sir, what team the Rangers beat in the first round of the playoffs last season?
Last season, I believe it was Windsor.
Oh, David, I believe you are incorrect, sir, but thank you for playing.
Thanks.
Okay, have a good day. It was not London. It was not Owen Sound. It was not Windsor. And I'm hanging on to the tickets for now because we've got to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. We'll play more later. It's Rangers playoff trivia on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just quickly, because I was already running late for Mark's 10 o'clock update in the 570 News Center. The answer to the question, of course, the Erie Otters. That's the team the Rangers beat in the first round of the playoffs last year. It wasn't Windsor, it wasn't London, it wasn't Owen Sound, but good guesses all. Rangers Flint tonight. Before we get there, we continue here on the show this morning, and we're joined by Ian McLean, who's the president and CEO at the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce. Mr. McLean, my friend, you knew the Erie Otters were the team we beat last year, right?
I did, because I listened to the Rangers live on 570 News Radio with Mike Farwell calling every game. So I knew that answer.
I knew you did, my friend. I knew you did. Do you know the answer, Ian, to what's going on inside the mind of the President of the United States?
At the risk of being rude, it's impossible to be inside that brain. Without a doubt, the stupidest person to ever be in the White House as President of the United States doesn't understand the fundamental here, and this is where we need to start. Tariffs are a tax. They're a tax on individuals, on business, and it's a race to the bottom when we get into it. So, and the uncertainty that is being produced. Yesterday's announcement was a train wreck. It was chaos. There is no clarity, and I think you even hear that from our leaders, Premier Ford, the Prime Minister. There's no certainty that came from yesterday. We're still not sure. The good news, and I do that in air quotes of saying good news of yesterday, is that we didn't get hit with more. But let's be clear. It's like winning an ugly contest. Whether you finish first, second, or third, you're still in an ugly contest. And so, we have to remember, and this is the context for our local business community, for the provincial economy, and for the national economy, is we still have steel and aluminum tariffs in place. That impacts just about everything we do in one way, shape, or form. Construction, building our homes and our communities, beer cans, tin cans that we find in the grocery store, the auto sector. It is devastating, and we just had on our Ask the Expert program today, Keenan Loomis, the CEO of the Canadian Institute of Steel Construction, and we heard how it's impacting the North American steel and steel supply and the steel industry. So that's got a huge impact. The real target would appear to be cheap Chinese steel, but they're catching the North American industry in the chaos that has ensued. Auto tariffs, there's no clarity in auto tariffs. We're not sure. They made the announcement last week on auto tariffs. There's no clarity on that. There's still 30 days to understand which parts are constituted under the Canadian U.S. Mexico trade agreement, on what parts are constituted as being American produced that go into assembly of vehicles in North America. So we don't know how much the tariffs are going to impact. And when you listen to Flavio Volpe, who's been on Business to Business, who you've, I'm sure, talked to, very shortly, you will find it is already happening now. Is we saw that Stellantis, near where you are in Flint, there's going to be shutdowns, and within 7-10 days, 2 weeks, we could have 950,000 American auto workers and supply chain workers at home, and 450,000 Canadians. Like the industry is so integrated, it could shut down. So we didn't win yesterday. We still have steel and auto tariffs. We still have auto tariffs that are uncertain and unclear. We have the fentanyl tariffs, which is the broad swath of 25%. Let alone all of the issues that are inevitably going to come up in the USMCA renegotiation. Softwood lumber, potash, rare earth and minerals, oil and gas, all things that drive the Canadian economy. And as I draw it down closer to what's happening in our neck of the woods for us locally here, uncertainty means investments and decisions on hiring and new contracts are all on hold. It's like we're in suspended animation now because no one knows what this actually means. So the work that we're trying to do is to say, we need to have clarity on these things, and we got to work with and try and get some clarity around what the rules of the road are. In the short term, this is not going to be a good moment. I think what the president did yesterday is almost guarantee there's going to be a global recession. I hate saying that word as a business person, but when you put tariffs on the entire world with the world's biggest market, it's going to produce a very, very, very negative result. So we got to support local business and the sectors that are most impacted. Really, this is 6 to 12 months. What are the things we need to do to keep our industry and our business going in the face of what we hope is at least in the short term in 6 to 12 months? And then we do need to renegotiate CUSMA, because this is where it's all leading. Is they're trying to soften us up for those renegotiations, but we do need to renew and refresh and get back to a point where we have free trade in large measure for the North American marketplace. At the same time, however, I think one thing is clear, Mike. We can't rely on the United States. Can't rely on them to adhere to a free trade agreement that they've signed 4 years ago. We can't rely on them as a global security partner anymore. They seem to be in bed. The only countries, there's 4 countries that were not covered yesterday in the tariff announcement. I'm just going to say these and then pause for a moment. Russia, North Korea, and Cuba, I believe, were the 4 that were not, or the 3 that were not covered in tariffs. Everyone else, including the European Union, Canada, Mexico, all covered in some way by this. But we need to then go and say, what are we going to do as a country to make sure we're not in this position moving forward? Well, we need to do fundamental tax reform. We need to utilize the other 50 countries where we have free trade agreements around the world and expand our markets. We need to build pipelines and trade enabling infrastructure, both Tidewater in East and West, so we have other markets. We need to invest in our military. Part of this is around our global security, and say we have to have a new global security framework, of which Canada can be part of with the Europeans and others around NATO. All of these things are big things that Canada has to do the heavy lifting, modernize our economy, expand our capacity to not be so reliant on the U.S. I can't believe we're even having this conversation, but that's where we are at this moment in time.
Ian, can you hang on with me a little bit longer? Because
Sure.
Thank you. Ian McLean with us. I want to talk more about what we're able to do locally to absorb the blow of these tariffs. Stay with us. Ian is, of course, the president, CEO of the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce, joins us on the Mike Farwell Show this morning, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We continue our conversation this morning with Ian McLean, President, CEO at the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce. No question that as a nation, we need to improve those, expand those relationships with the 50 countries where we do have free trade. We need to get our resources to market. We need to beef up our military. Ian, when it comes to the business community right here in the region of Waterloo, how are we supporting them to absorb these blows from the tariff?
Yeah, look, I think the place to start is to say every business is affected differently. So it depends what sector you're in, but it very much depends on where your supply chains come from. There are businesses that are that do a lot of business. Their end product is here in Canada, so that's great. Unfortunately, their supplies and their input costs come almost exclusively from the U.S., which means they're going to be subject to the import reciprocal tariffs that we're putting in place. Some of these things are going to be unintended consequences, but everyone's affected differently. What I would say is on the local level, our friends through the Best Waterloo, which is the business economic support team of Waterloo Region, and that, of course, is Greg DeRocher in the Cambridge Chamber, our chamber, Tony Lamantia at the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation, our friends at Communitech, and Michelle in the Explore Waterloo, which is hospitality and tourism. We're working collectively. We have done that since the start of COVID 5 years ago, very much saying, what are the things we can do locally? So some of the things we're doing is we're putting lists together and online capacity for people to understand where there are import substitution opportunities within Canada, so you get away from having some of those American inputs. We encourage to buy local. Like we're seeing that people are voting with their feet. They're very angry, both individually and as businesses, is saying we're not going to, whenever possible, buy Canadian, support those things that are not American. I mean, we have to try and make this painful for the Americans. We're helping. We're in the process of figuring out how we do, business trade shows to say where are other markets, where are some of the other suppliers that we have connections to in other free trade countries where we have those free trade agreements. So we're doing that at the local level to try and give people the information. We, of course, are working with and put a lot of information on chambercheck.ca. There's all kinds of information that comes from our friends and banks and accounting firms and BDC and EDC and wherever we can find the best information, we're putting it there. People are doing their own research and saying, how is this affecting my individual business and the sector that I'm within? We, of course, do Ask the Expert every Thursday. We're bringing experts on from fields, to try and understand how things are affecting different parts of the economy. And we will be advocating, as we did during COVID and we'll do now, is once there's more clarity, once the federal election thankfully is over, and God, I don't really care who wins, but I hope it's a majority government, because we got some big decisions to make on how to support individuals, like workers that are going to be affected in steel and auto and up and down the list in the short term, and the businesses that employ them to get through the short period of time, and then do those at the same time while we're doing all those local pieces, is saying Canada must meet this moment to grow as a country, to be more self-sufficient, do the investment on tax and infrastructure and other markets that we haven't done in 30 years. So that's an own goal on our own, is that we're not more resilient and more independent than we should be. But let's be very clear. It is going to be a period of time where we all need to come together. It does need to be Team Canada, regardless of political affiliation. Elbows up, Team Canada. We need to make sure that we are making this the case and doing the things we need to support the Canadian local business and economy. And I think that it always, I guess the analogy is it doesn't look very promising right now, but there will come a point when we get past this. And I think ultimately this is going to come down, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but ultimately this is going to have to be the same U.S. consumer that elected Donald Trump in the first place are going to be the ones that put an end to this, because they are going to feel gas prices go up, costs of their houses going up, groceries going up. Their pocketbooks are going to be affected, and they'll have no one else to blame but their own administration and Donald Trump and these tariffs. And that's, I don't know how long that takes, 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, 12 months, but that's where it's going to end when the American consumer says enough. So we've got lots of heavy lifting to do locally, and we're doing that. We encourage people to be in touch with us. We want to hear the stories about how they're impacted, because to try and find the solutions to or the supports that people need, we need to know how individual businesses, individual sectors are being affected, because it is very unique to each business. So, that's what we're doing on the local level, and we have to keep telling the stories and sharing on shows like this, on business to business, and on other things about how people are being affected and what we see as the solution moving forward.
It is great to get your perspective, Ian. Thanks very much for making time for the show this morning.
Hey, listen, always good to be on with you, Mike. And please, I want you to come on business to business soon to tell the story of Farwell for Hire. And of course, we always love having you on the #1 business show on 570 News at noon on Sundays, powered by Cowan Insurance Group. You have to say that whole thing together for it to be true. But we'd love to have you on soon.
I would love to be on soon. I'm a regular listener to it. I would love to come on as a guest. Thank you, sir.
All right, go Rangers. I'll be listening tonight.
Appreciate you. Ian McLean is the president and CEO at the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce, and he puts it in plain English for us this morning, doesn't he? The impact of those tariffs and how we're supporting our local business community. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. All right, I have time, and if you have answers to Rangers playoff trivia, let's take an opportunity to give away tickets. These tickets are burning a hole in my pocket. I want to give them to you. Tomorrow night's Rangers game at the Memorial Auditorium. You want to go? 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. I tried to give away a pair about a half an hour ago, and nobody seemed to know that the team the Rangers beat in the first round last year was the Erie Otters. So I have another question ready for you. It's Rangers playoff trivia. You answer the question. I give you a pair of tickets to tomorrow night's Game 5 at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, okay? It is that easy. You just have to answer the question. Let's begin Rangers playoff trivia with Norma, who is on the line with us. Norma, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
I know that you're a big Rangers fan. I know that you follow this team. I have faith in you, Norma.
Oh, I hope so. I knew the Erie Otters.
Oh, 3 other people did not. We went 0 for 3. All right, let's try this one, Norma. Rangers playoff trivia. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay. Norma, which player on the Rangers leads the team in playoff scoring this year? Who's got the most points, Norma?
Oh.
Come on, Norma, you can do it.
No, I'm good. I guess I'll just guess. Is it Andonovsky?
I'm sorry, Norma. It is not Captain Matt Andonovsky. Thanks for playing, though. All right, let's, is that Ben on line 1 there? Devin, I can't quite read it. Ben? Yeah, Ben, good morning.
Good morning.
Are you ready for your really, it's not really easy, Rangers playoff trivia question. Can you answer it for me, Ben? Who leads the Rangers?
I think it's Jack Pridham.
Oh, you're so close, but it's not Pridham. Plays on a line with Pridham, though. I got to let you go, Ben. I'm going to try one more here. Looks like Bryce is going to be next. Bryce. Good morning, Bryce.
Good morning. How you doing there, Farzy?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Bryce,
yes.
Can you tell me who leads the Rangers in playoff scoring this season? Who's got the most points, Bryce?
Yeah, number 57, Trent Swick.
Attaboy, Bryce. You nailed it. The big red sluice. Yes, number 57, Trent Swick, leads the Rangers right now in playoff points with 3 goals, 3 assists through 3 games. Way to go, Bryce. You're going to the game tomorrow night.
Awesome.
Good job, buddy. Hang on the line for me. Devin's going to take down your info. We're going to hook you up with those tickets. I love it when a plan comes together. Oh, by the way, I still have another pair of tickets to give away, and I'm going to do it between noon and 1. I promise. And you'll have to answer a Rangers playoff trivia question like Bryce just did. Trent Swick leads the Rangers in playoff scoring. All right. An update from the 570 News Center. And then it is time for Living Retired. Gary Chalk joins us coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Ooka chaka, ooka, ooka, ooka chaka, ooka, ooka, ooka chaka, ooka, ooka, ooka chaka, ooka, ooka. I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling. I'm high on believing.
Ah, yes, every Thursday morning at this time, we do get hooked on the feeling of laughter, because humor columnist Gary Chalk joins us to bring his humor column, Living Retired, to life on our program. You can find the column at livingretired.press. And while you're there, hey, make sure you sign up for the newsletter so that column can be delivered directly to your inbox each and every week. Livingretired.press, and the author himself, Gary Chalk, joins the show. Good morning, Gary.
Hey, good morning, Mike. With a mic. How are things along the shores of the Flint River?
Let me tell you, they're looking pretty good today. We got absolutely deluged with rain yesterday, but it's been sunny all morning, so I'm not going to complain on this side.
No, but think about what we're doing here, Mike. You're in a different country. You're in Flint, Michigan. The radio station is in Kitchener, and I'm on the other side of Kitchener over near Brantford and St. George. So we got all this technology in the hands of Devin. You know, he's got the left hand coordinated with the right hand. We're all working together. So, Mike, if that's the case, if we can do that, with all that coordination Devin's pulling off, why can't the people who make hot dog wieners, who sell them in packages of 10, and the bun guys who sell their buns in packages of 8, we got to get Devin onto that case.
If anybody can solve that age-old dilemma, Gary, it is our man Devin. You got it. You nailed it. This is perfect. We are solving the world's problems together on Living Retired today.
Well, you know, we're also doing it on a very special day, Mike. I don't know whether you recall where this came up. Today is our 50th episode of Living Retired on the radio. 50th episode. Or I guess as Rosie the Pandemic Pup would say, it's our, 350th show? But this is our 50th that we're celebrating today. It is.
Is there cake? I like it. There needs to be cake.
Well, you know, I've been going through a birthday, and my mind went back to cake when I was a kid. My favorite has always been angel food, but at birthday parties when I was a kid, I don't think you get away with it these days. The mother of the birthday person baked a cake, and in the cake, she took a nickel or a dime or something, wrapped it in wax paper, and stuffed it in the cake. Do you remember that?
I remember that vividly, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Well, you know, I didn't. As I say, I have been. You know, they talk about the 70 is the new 60 and 60 is the new 50. So I decided for my birthday this year, because it's, as Jan says, a milestone birthday. I am celebrating what we call the new 55 birthday. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it this year. That's the way it's going to be. But
all right, happy new 55 to you then.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right. And next year it'll be happy new 56. Anyways, today is also April 3rd. It's a special day for two reasons, Mike. And I don't make this stuff up. Today is Burrito Day. Okay, it's Burrito Day. And for the people, again, we need Devin on this, the people who coordinate all these special days, they somehow let another organization celebrate World Party Day today. So think about it. We've got Burrito Day celebrating along with World Party Day. This could be a massive problem. I mean, Mike, if millions of people consume their burritos and all those refried beans, and then they celebrate World Party Day, Mike, we got ourselves a problem on our hands.
And that problem would be?
We'll just leave it at there. But the other thing...
Okay.
The other thing is with April here, there's lots of things to do. Many women are decorating their house for Easter. And while they do that, all the husbands, we de-decorate by taking down those Christmas lights. You know, the nice weather's here, and they're sort of hanging from the eaves a little bit, blowing in the wind. So we take that down. And then the other thing, many women go about spring cleaning. And while they start to look at the spring cleaning list, I run out to the backyard and try to figure how to thaw the garden hose. It's been outside all winter, and it's just all frozen in a terrible shape, and it just keeps you busy. But all this to say, Mike, that as winter is now behind us, past couple of months, Jan and I, we've completed the finishing these projects around the place. Think about it. We've got all new flooring on our main floor. And we now have a new hot water tank about to be installed. We've got a new water softener about to be installed. And I thought I'd just sort of hit the trifecta. And we've got a new furnace, which is coming in. So this is our way of contributing to the economy. It doesn't matter about tariffs. We're just doing that to help out whatever we can for the economy. So what it's come down to, we've lived in this house, I think, 13 years. It was built in 1995. So I guess when you purchase a house, there's two things everybody should be prepared for. First of all, after the movers have emptied their truck and at the same time damaged your antique mahogany dining room table, and when they left, they put 3-foot deep ditches on your front lawn. That's the exact same time you go to the front door of the house and you see the official notice that says, "This house does not meet code." Don't want that, Mike. And then the other thing is renovation and renovating everything. It never stops. Never. It just goes on and on and on. Sort of like the night before when you're prepping for a colonoscopy. It just goes on and on and on. And I cannot help but now look forward to not having to all those big box stores. They're everywhere. It's like going to McDonald's. I expect them to say, do you want some insulation with your order today? That's how much I've been doing all these renovations. But the bottom line, as far as I can see it, is if you want to do your part to help the economy, the best thing you can do is renovate your house, right? You put all this work into it, and then 3 years in is when it happens. You've finished all the renovations. You're finally going to put your feet up, and this is our forever home. And that's when you learn that the neighbor beside you, they've sold their home, and the new owners raise chinchillas in their backyard. And
so much for the forever home.
Yeah. And they've also got a kid who's just taking to lessons to learn how to play the bagpipe. This is not the neighbor you want, Mike.
Definitely not.
No, and all you have to do then is move, right? That's when your for sale sign goes up, and you purchase a new home. Instead of a fixer-upper, you finally break down, and you get the new home. And a new home, last I checked, they come with the new home 5-year warranty. And basically, if you read or you go to experience with people who have the new home with their new home 5-year warranty, it means 5 years and 1 day from then, that's when you begin to renovate. Right?
I love it. Of course it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you? I know you did your kitchen. Have you done any other renovations?
Oh, yeah, we did the basement, too. And then we said, that's it, because this is now our forever home until the neighbors start, chinchillas.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I know. And also what we had was when we finished the basement, well, it didn't stop there, because then I thought, well, got a new basement, I better replace the sump pump. This is the first house I've ever lived in that has a sump pump. Do you have one?
Well, I do, and they're going to come in handy for us today, I think, Gary, with all of these flood warnings. We'll pick up on that thought in just a moment. Stay with us. Gary Chalk joins us every Thursday morning at this time with Living Retired here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Thursday mornings, 10:30, Gary Chalk joins us with his humor column, Living Retired, bringing it to life on our show. You can read it for yourself online, livingretired.press, and while you're there, sign up to have it delivered directly to your inbox every week, livingretired.press. Gary, we were talking about sump pumps. Let's pump it up here because those sump pumps are going to come in handy on a day like today.
It will, and here's what my suggestion is I think what we should do is the guys, we look after the sump pump, and if you have children in your house, I would let your wife get them out to enroll them in all the sports that are just about to be going forward, because there's so much of it at this time of year. But one of the most popular sports we always hear about these days is soccer. You know, it's taking across North America. You know, kids learn teamwork and sportsmanship, motor skills, agility, but even more important than that is they need, if they're going to be a professional soccer player, is to learn how to act. And that's where there's this new soccer league coming in. It's called the Soccer League for the Performing Arts. And what it does is, this is for parents of children who, you know, the parents think, hey, my kid is going to become the next soccer player, which means they'll be an international star and sort of like be the Cameron Diaz or Matthew McConaughey, whatever. So the kids and these parents, what you need to do is get your kids into the Soccer League for the Performing Arts. And what they do is they'll ensure that they'll tutor your children, and they assume you know how to kick a ball and run. What they will do is teach your children how to fake a near-death soccer injury that necessitates your kid to fall down to the ground and collapsing there and flailing, and all of this because they had a violent encounter with a dandelion.
Absolutely.
That's right. This is what comes from the Soccer League for the Performing Arts. And what happens is they'll also teach your kid, when this scenario is going on, that as your kid is flailing on the ground with her arms, mom in the stand starts flailing her arms. She's trying to attract the attention of the referee, but at the same time, they teach mother how to flail their arms so that you can summon an orange helicopter to transport your soccer kid to a trauma center, because that's what needs to be done if you're going to learn to be a soccer player. That's what
I understand. I get where you're coming from, Gary. It's one of the reasons I love hockey so much. You knock them down, they get right back up again.
Right back up. That's right. And, you know, and the other thing is the Soccer League for the Performing Arts will even teach your kid that that when the kid falls on the ground, they'll teach so that the arm is up so the referee can instantly take your pulse of your kid to make sure that they're capable of continuing on. So there's the opportunities here are great. They're already lining up sponsors. You know, the local, you know, like it could be your kid could be on the team, Fred's Law Firm. And on the front of the shirt, you know, Fred's is a full-service law firm, so it'd say Fred's Law Firm, prenuptials, real estate, wills, divorce. Your full-service law firm from start to finish. Right? It's what you need. And did you know also they are going to, the new soccer league for the performing arts, they're going to call not a soccer field, but they're going to be like the Europeans and call it a pitch. And the pitch, it's interesting, this word pitch that they use over in Europe for the soccer fields comes from the word pitcher, which in Europe it means that European soccer fans, by the thousands, they drink beer by the pitcher, and then these inebriated adults sing songs that are non-intelligible, and then they go on a rampage to rip the stadium apart and set fire to police cars. It's just sort of the whole, that's how soccer works over there. And a couple other things I've learned about this new soccer league for the performing arts opening soon. They will be continuing the tradition of other minor league soccer teams we're all aware of, and that's the post-game ritual. The kids get their orange slice and a pop, and the parents ridicule the coach. They scream about the children on the team who have a European-sounding last name who get to play the entire game, and then at the same time manage to teach their children all sorts of four-letter words. It comes down to soccer is the sport that encourages children to excel at a game by using their head, which something parents haven't, I don't think, grasped yet.
How to use their head.
How to use your head. You know,
that's right.
The new soccer league for the performing arts, their motto, if it's good for the parents, it's even better for the kids.
Gary, I can't wait to see kids on soccer pitches around the region playing in the new league this spring. It's always fun to chat with you. Thanks for being here again today.
And happy whatever. Oh, yeah, 50th episode of Living Retired on the radio. And go Rangers.
Go Rangers. Gary Chalk joins us every Thursday morning from the home offices near Brantford with Living Retired, his humor column. And you can find it online for yourself at livingretired.press. And while you're at livingretired.press, sign up for the newsletter yourself. It'll be in the column will be delivered directly to your inbox each and every week. And believe you me, the Living Retired humor column is much better than the latest memo from the boss. There's no two ways about it. And look at that, 50 episodes of Living Retired in the books here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, what a difference 24 hours makes, eh? I was just looking at a time-lapse video from yesterday's storm that blew through the region. What an incredible mess of weather we got in one 24-hour period. And what a swing in temperature, as we've got a difference of 15 to 20 degrees from the low point yesterday to the high point that we're going to reach today. But it certainly feels good to be on this side of it all, doesn't it? I'm on the other side of the border again today, doing the show from my hotel in Flint because we're getting ready for the Rangers and the Firebirds tonight. You'll hear the game, of course, right here on 570 News Radio. Pre-game coverage will get underway at 6:30, and there will be a Game 5 at minimum in this series, and that Game 5 is tomorrow night back at the Memorial Auditorium in Kitchener. I've got a pair of tickets to still give away, which I will do between noon and 1 today. So make sure you're with us through the final hour of the show today, and we will award those tickets for the game tomorrow night. All you have to do is answer our Rangers playoff trivia question, okay? It is the first Thursday of the month, and on the first Thursday of each month now, we do a little segment called Throwback Thursdays, where we get a chance to take a little trip down memory lane, and we're going to extend that through our Flipside conversation today as well. So a little bit of reminiscing about the places that we've loved in this community. Stay with us as we continue the Mike Farwell Show this morning. We're in Flint, and you're along with us, and we appreciate having you here. You're listening to 570 News Radio and watching Rogers TV. Something new that we have started on the show this year, and believe you me, it's long overdue. I've long wanted to do this, and we've finally gotten it off the ground, thanks in particular to our friends at the City of Waterloo Museum. First Thursday of the month at this time, we do a little Throwback Thursday segment. And joining us from the City of Waterloo Museum to help out with that is Jennifer Huber, who's a program and engagement associate there. Jen, great to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us back for Throwback Thursday with the City of Waterloo Museum. So I hope everyone's ready to take a step back in time to uncover the fascinating stories of our community.
I love this. And there are so many stories in the community. When I finally got moving on this and you and I began to talk about it, you have so many. I'm like, yes, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. And today, some people may be a little too young to remember that there was a time that the expressway that runs through our community wasn't even there.
Absolutely. It's funny how you just get so used to having specific features in your community and you take them for granted. And I will say I was one of those folks. I knew a little bit about the expressway and how it came to be. I knew they did the groundbreaking in 1966 and sections started being finished in the late 60s. And by 71, the whole thing, or what they stopped with was the whole thing at that time, was completed. And they had lots of celebrations around it. So I knew those pieces of the story just from working in museums. But for this talk, I actually looked into a little bit more about how did that idea come to be? Because you don't see an expressway in every community, right?
Absolutely. In fact, we're lucky to have it. Just ask London, who I think would love to have an expressway like ours.
Absolutely. And you even think of the style of expressway, and I'll talk a little bit about that, because where I got to is the idea of an expressway started in the 1940s. believe it or not, like that took me back farther than I expected us to go. And I thought about what was happening in Kitchener and Waterloo in the 1940s. You know, we're at the end of the Second World War. Soldiers are returning. This might sound familiar to many people, but there was a housing crisis or a housing shortage at that time. You can see it all over the newspapers. Waterloo does its part. They create the Veterans Green, which is over by Laurier University today. It's one of our first housing projects that we see here as a way to try to address that. But if you think about where Veterans Green is, it was towards the outskirts of Waterloo when it was first built. During that time, we can see we're looking for those ways of solving these population issues, and not even issues, but just that expanding population. In 1951, Waterloo was a population of 12,000 people. Kitchener was 44,000 people. Just to start wrapping your head around the community that started having conversations about, let's build this expressway.
It's incredible to me because you think about that, Jen. And so what, we're talking 70 years ago, and we seem so itty bitty size-wise, population-wise compared to today. I want some of that industrious nature back, though. Like, we built great things back then.
Absolutely. We certainly did. And I think that was what kind of inspired some of this early expressway conversations. So the first plan starts in 1949. They draw this ring road. And I think you talked about it last year or last time we were talking about how it was going to go all around our community and it was going to encircle us and provide access for people and goods to be moved quite easily. So that was the original idea. They tweak it in the 50s. It's Norman Dryden. He's the person who's tasked with putting this road plan together. And he creates a pretty solid base for what becomes the Conestoga Expressway as we know it today. But it really starts to get legs in the 1960s. And I said, why? What's happening in the 1960s that's creating such a big change? But Kitchener and Waterloo were both in huge population increases. Waterloo was growing at a 78% increase in population. And Kitchener wasn't far behind at a 66% increase. And our national average was only 30%. So these are rapidly growing communities. And part of it is just like you mentioned, we had that infrastructure and facilities of manufacturing and producing of goods happening in our own backyard. So people were drawn here because we had opportunity waiting at the door. But it's in that 1960s when we're seeing that massive growth that the city of Kitchener hires a gentleman named Bill Thompson. And Bill Thompson is the very first City of Kitchener director of planning. So he comes in with a master's in planning and he looks at these early 50s maps and he has to start thinking outside the box. He's got all these ideas he's considering and he's trying to figure out, where is Kitchener-Waterloo going? What's this community going to look like? What directions are they expanding in? You know, what are they changing in their town cores? Because if you think about both Kitchener and Waterloo in the 50s and into the 60s, they were very industrial areas, right? We have a lot of manufacturing happening. Uptown Waterloo had things like the Waterloo Manufacturing, a number of furniture industries there, whiskey, which I mentioned last year is how our museum grew out of, beer, Carling's Beer is in that area at that time as well, right? So there's a lot of goods being moved in that area. Are being produced in those areas. And the city cores are shifting. The city of Waterloo embarks on what was then a crazy project to put a shopping center in their Uptown Waterloo core. I know it sounds crazy now. You're like, oh, the shops and all down there. But yeah, it was kind of a brand new idea that you were putting this urban development in the smack dab in what was then the heart of a very manufacturing area. So it's all of this that's swirling around in Bill's head. And Bill is partnered with the city of Waterloo's Darcy Dutton. He's the engineer for the city and he's the lead from Waterloo's side. And the fact that they were working on the same project, building the same road, how they did it was so different. And I always find that really interesting because I get asked a lot, is Kitchener and Waterloo different in their histories? So kind of a fun little piece there, but we can dive more into that in just a moment.
All right. Dutton and Thompson kind of coming together on this with these ideas of how we're going to connect these beautiful centers. Jennifer Huber is with us. She's Program and Engagement Associate with the City of Waterloo Museum. Our Throwback Thursday takes us back to the days before there was an expressway and how that expressway came to be. Stay with us on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. On the first Thursday of the month, with a little help from our friends at the City of Waterloo Museum, we do a Throwback Thursday segment. Our friend from the City of Waterloo Museum is Jennifer Huber. She is a program and engagement associate at the City of Waterloo Museum, and we're talking about the days before there was an expressway in this community. We had Dutton in Waterloo, we had Thompson in Kitchener. They had a grand vision for how this community might one day be connected. But I guess, Jen, there were a lot of steps along the way. You talked about this going back to the 1940s when it was first conceived of.
Absolutely. And they're watching as the community has grown and changed throughout the 50s, and we're getting into the 1960s, and they're looking at where's the future of Kitchener and Waterloo both going? What are these communities going to do, and how do we need to plan for that future and where we're going? And that's when Bill Thompson sits down at his table with some of the earliest plans that they had for what we know today as the Conestoga Parkway. And what they had in these plans is they had a railroad that had a number of traffic circles and stoplights. I laugh because I think it would be a very different commute these days if that's what we were looking at. But that's what he's looking at. And he is looking at these traffic circles and these stoplights. And it's Bill Thompson who actually says, this is not going to grow with us. It's not going to work. We need to move to a new model of highway. And what they looked at were fully controlled expressways that had clover leaf entrances, which are the on-grade ramps that we see today, and barriers dividing the road. And that's what he transitions this plan to be. So he is looking at how our communities are growing, seeing that expansion and saying, we need to think further ahead, further outside the box of what Waterloo's expressway is going to be and how it's going to serve our community there. And really, he's inspired by the QEW. The QEW was built in the 1930s, and it went from, as you know, Toronto down into the Niagara area. And the goal of that was to take the high traffic trucks and infrastructure off of the small community roads, and it allowed those small community roads to really flourish, like the different towns along the way, that they could actually become communities and towns and not have to worry about big transport coming through the communities. So he was looking at that QEW model and said, that's what we need to do. We need to move that off. So if you look at where the expressway goes, it kind of runs parallel to King Street as it was at different parts. I mean, it crosses over, as we can have lots of great conversations of the many directions of the roads of Kitchener-Waterloo.
One of my favorite features of this community, for sure.
Always worth a good chuckle when people get to town and they're like, it went all four directions, that one road. And you're like, yeah, it did.
It did.
But that's what he is inspired by, and that's what he's looking at doing. We're also seeing a huge move from manufacturing goods from rail being put onto roads, and that's one of the things that they're considering. So they're moving those industrial cores out of downtown and uptown cores into new business areas, and they're starting to look at how the expressway is going to serve and service those. Now, Kitchener was unique in that they were very much planning the expressway to run through in communities. So starting in the 1950s, they're collecting properties in which they are going to be building the expressway to run through. And they create a committee that's going to try to find fair prices and fair partnerships that they can do this with. And that's part of Kitchener's story, is there was a lot of community upset. Not everybody was a fan of having to give up their property or their business location at that time. Waterloo's story is a little bit different in that they are acquiring new lands. In the 1950s, we see them getting 700 acres going east towards Bridge. In the 1960s, we're moving Northfield and Bridge Street with 3,500 acres, and we're putting new subdivisions in those areas. Those small suburb communities are popping up, and we're starting to think about how are we moving those people? Because a lot of those suburbs were rather isolated places when they were first built. There wasn't shopping centers there. There wasn't, clothing stores, schools. We were a little bit behind in adding some of those features into it. So how are we moving those people around? And that's really what the expressway starts to do, is it creates that opportunity for all these people who are spread out to now have access to come together and move much more effectively. They connect different roads between Kitchener and Waterloo. I was having a good chuckle because I was looking at some early maps when it was Fisher Drive and Holman Road. Today, you know that as Fisher Holman.
I remember that. I mean, I remember that was the case. I don't remember Fisher Holman as anything other than Fisher Holman, but yes, I remember hearing that story from the past.
Yeah, and you can see Herb Street was identified as a big one, so they connected Herb Street and Bridgeport Road at that time. Westmount Road was extended, and they had this little street called Dearborn that they saw a potential, and you'll know that today as University Ave.
Wow, okay.
And so it's kind of interesting. I thought it was fun. Columbia Street was North Street then because it was the most northern street we had. So you start to see how all these new roads that they're building within the community as well to feed into the new expressway is coming to be. So in 1971, they opened the expressway. They've completed it from King Street all the way down to Fisher Holman. And we know that that's not where it ends today, but they started adding some more of those additions into the 1970s. So we see how the expressway has continued to expand in shape. And the big other important piece was that it was able to connect to the 401, which was a newer project starting in the 60s as well.
I guess you think back on this, Jen, and it's no wonder that we've grown like we have, considering the access that the expressway has given us. You mentioned the connection to the 401, and then, of course, the ability to move those goods and those people through this region.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge game changer.
Lots of fun. And never did finish that ring road, though, that was originally conceived, eh?
It's funny you mention that. I was looking at some pictures, and there are some folks that would argue with the completion of Ira Needles kind of coming up along that eastern border by Northfield, that in some cases, it's not quite an expressway ring road, but they are what they called arterial roads that are very active and meant for moving traffic and people. So,
you know what? I was
thinking out there.
And it's fair. I was thinking as you were outlining some of those other roads, Westmount, Herb, etc., those regional roads that move an awful lot of vehicle traffic as well certainly do feed into the rest of the transportation network. So much fun. Jen, thanks for this little trip down memory lane on Throwback Thursday.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Jennifer Huber, Program and Engagement Associate with the City of Waterloo Museum, joins us on the first Thursday of every month with a little Throwback Thursday. And today we learn more about the evolution of the expressway. Where would we be without it? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The first Thursday of every month is a Throwback Thursday. And our thanks again to Jennifer Huber with the City of Waterloo Museum, helping us remember some of those things from our community's past. And today, a conversation about the expressway, dating back to the 1940s when we first started talking about it, and then work beginning in earnest in the 60s, and ultimately opening our expressway did in 1971. I had thought it was the late 60s, but that's obviously when the lion's share of the work was being done. And I will not forget 71 again, because that was a very good vintage, as I have come to believe in this life anyway. That means the expressway opened the year I was born. I often think back, though, so I've never known a Waterloo region without an expressway. And I think back on it, and I wonder what it was like back then. One of my favorite photos, and I admit to my bias because I'm such a big fan of not only the Kitchener Rangers, but the arena where they play, our Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, and the aerial photograph of that arena as it's built back in 1951. And everybody said, why did you build it out in the middle of nowhere? Because there is no expressway, obviously, back then. And everybody wondered, this arena way out there in the middle of nowhere. And look at it now, of course, it's almost central to the city of Kitchener, and the expressway runs right along in behind the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. Kitchener Waterloo planners coming together. In Waterloo, they talk about that uptown Waterloo Mall. And who doesn't remember the Kmart that anchored that urban mall in Waterloo back in the day. Lots of fun. And a ring road that the argument is being made now with Ira Needles. You know, take the expressway to Trustler, get off, you get onto Ira Needles, and that is a pretty good connection point, save for all of those ding-dang roundabouts. But who'd have thunk? Traffic signals and roundabouts originally conceived as part of our expressway design. Thank goodness we went with what we went with, because where would we be without our expressway? Thursday mornings, 11:30 is the flip side, when we have a little bit of fun, and we're going to stay along these same lines of going back down memory lane, because I shared with you during the Farwell Show 5 this morning, the 5 things I talk about right at the beginning of the show that you might be interested in. Town Bowl, we know it very well. 60 plus years of bowling on Ottawa Street in Kitchener. Well, the Sporting Link, or the Sports Link, a soccer-based business, is moving in there. And it just got me thinking of all the time I spent at Town Bowl as a kid enjoying bowling. So what place did you used to go for entertainment that's no longer there, that you miss the most? That's the question for the flip side, coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Hutch, come on with your coming on. Game 4 tonight, baby. Game 4. Game day, baby. Game day. Game 5 tomorrow at the Memorial Auditorium, and I'm going to give you some tickets for that in the next hour. Between noon and 1, I will award those tickets that I have for Game 5 tomorrow. Tonight, Game 4, Rangers looking to take a 3-1 series lead. But that's tonight. Right now, Thursday morning at this time, we get to take a break from the heavy stuff and have a little fun on the flip side. And I was just thinking about the story I shared during the Farwell Show 5 at the beginning of the show today, those 5 little tidbits I let you know about, and one of them being that there is a new lease on life, if you will, for Town Bowl. Not as a bowling alley, though, but still staying connected, I guess, to recreation, because the Sports Link is moving in there, a local soccer-based business, moving from its place on Ontario Street into Town Bowl, and they're going to start the renovations in the next month or so. Just got me to thinking back about all of the time I spent at Town Bowl. We used to have birthday parties there. They had a little video arcade off to the side and some video games around, which I also loved. But I didn't really know 10-pin bowling was a thing, because we always went to Town Bowl for 5-pin, and that's almost all we played as kids. It just got me thinking back on that. And I wondered about those places that we used to go for entertainment or activities that are no longer with us. And that's the question I'm asking you about on the flip side this morning. What place did you used to go to have a good time that's no longer there anymore, that you miss the most? 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. The place you used to be entertained, it's no longer there and you miss it. Eat and putt for me has got to be top of the list. I remember the feeling of excitement when you drove up to it and you saw the big red and white slide that you would go down in the burlap sacks, right? Not to mention the mini golf that was there, but eat and putt for me has to be number 1 on the list. What about you? Let's go to the phones, and we'll start with Mark this morning. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Mike.
What place Hi, Mark.
Okay. Not too many people would remember this store, Mike. Back in the mid-'60s, it was right on the corner of Frederick and King Street, across from the old farmers market. It was called Twin City Fruits. And they had the best fruit, peanuts, basket of peanuts, all that really good stuff. Twin City Fruits, mid-'60s. My grandfather opened the store, and my dad took it over, and then he turned it into an arcade, which didn't go very well. He actually went bankrupt on that one. But the arcade was very cool. I was just a kid. But yeah, Twin City Fruits, Mike, if anybody remembers that, it was one of the neatest stores going.
All right, Mark, appreciate the call. Twin City Fruits, not necessarily a place you went for entertainment and activities, but something that Mark remembers fondly. And I love the family connection to that. Pretty cool. Arcades. Now there's another, I mean, boy, oh boy. And, everybody loved Zappers downtown. I get it. But I was a Flynn's guy in downtown Kitchener. And yes, many a roll of quarters used up in the video arcades that used to be in downtown Kitchener. Let's go next to Ernie. Ernie, you're with us on the flip side. What is the place that you used to go for fun that's no longer there and you miss it the most?
Well, I always say Zappers, but there was always another place, but I think a lot of people don't even know. And it used to be on Fairway Road, and it was on where the whole block of Toys R Us.
The Sunset Drive-In.
There before? It was the drive-in theater.
The drive-in, yes, sir.
Yeah, always went by there all the time. Never went in because our European parents they were cheap and they didn't do that stuff.
Come on, Ernie, they were cheap. I love it.
Yeah, they were cheap. They didn't want to do it. But yeah, the drive-in theater on that.
All right, Ernie. Appreciate the call. Good to hear from you. It's funny. My drive-in memories are with my friends in the neighborhood, like way back in the Mount Hope area where we were wee lads. We moved from there when I was 6 years old, but the Hitchburgers were our best friends, Kevin and Casey. I just reconnected actually with Casey about 2 months ago at an event. Anyway, their mom would always take us. We'd have sleepovers and she'd take us to the drive-in, the crew. I loved it. And of course, as much as Ernie's remembering, I'm pretty sure it was the Sunset on Fairway Road, right? But the KW drive-in down in Bridgeport, let's call Bridgeport, its own separate entity. That was the one that I would most frequently go to. And I was there for the very last show in whatever it was, 90 something or other. It was 90s. Anyway, drive-in is Ernie's favorite entertainment venue from years gone by that he misses the most. Let's go next to Bob. Bob, good morning.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Bob.
One of the places I miss, I don't know if you heard of it or not, it used to be called TC's.
TC's. Give me a place. Where was it?
It used to be in the bottom of Waterloo Square.
Bottom of Waterloo Square.
Yeah,
there's a bowling alley down there. Yeah. I don't remember. What was TC's?
Oh, there was a little bar inside. There was an arcade and pool tables. And
okay.
We used to go, when in my early 20s, we used to go there almost every weekend, me and my buddies.
Yep.
And that was one of the places. And the other thing was going to the Herman lunch.
Oh, of course.
And then going to the movie theater downtown Waterloo.
The Waterloo Theater, I remember when it was there. What other ones did they have?
Well, just Waterloo. That was before the before the Twin Cinemas, Princess.
Of course, yes.
And go to the Herman lunch, go to a movie, then go back to the Herman lunch and sit there and talk.
All right, Bob. Appreciate the call this morning. Thanks for weighing in. Of course, the Harmony lunch is going to factor into that, right? Great place to grab a bite and then go to the movie theater that used to be, the Waterloo Theater, which was basically King and Bridgeport in Uptown Waterloo. And now we do have the Princess Twin, of course. And TC's, good place to shoot pool, Bob says. Let's go next to Jan. Jan, good morning. What place did you used to go to that you missed the most?
Hi, Mike. Hi, everyone. So when we moved down here from Port Elgin in 2001, and missing the beach so terribly, we would go to Sports World, and it was amazing.
You know what? I can see how you would have that connection because the beach, especially
like so dry here. Oh my God, we have to find water. And then we'd go across the street to I think it was called Pioneer Barbecue for a hot beef sandwich. And
the hot beef sandwich, yes.
So good. And one more thing, my mom and I would come down on a Saturday from Port Elgin in high school and go down to the King Center downtown when it was the mall.
Sure.
And then I used to come down to concerts at Super Skate 7 in high school, and I saw Loverboy there, Platinum Blonde. Oh, it was awesome.
I love it. Jan, what brought you down here from Port Elgin? Why didn't you stay up there in God's country?
Well, my husband worked in Walkerton, Mike, and when the water scandal went down, It was pretty scary. He was very sick for a long time.
How's he doing?
He's good now. I mean, it's
Good,
24
good.
years later, but
Of course.
we were just like, our daughter was 2 at the time. We thought, well, if we're going to move, we better go now before she gets settled at school, blah, blah, blah. And Kitchener, we knew pretty well. And he's a tool and die maker, so there was a lot of manufacturing at the time down here, right? And I'm a hairdresser and a PSW, so I found work right away. But anyway, I really miss that. And Lulu's, too. Remember when Motorhead played there?
Do I remember? Absolutely. Absolutely. Those are great memories, Jan. Thanks for the call. Good to hear from you today. Oh boy, that takes me back. The whole Walkerton water scandal. When I first returned to this station, because I had a brief stop here in the late 90s, and then it was 2003 that I came back full time to this radio station. And the very first story I covered, first day on the job, Farwell, get in the company vehicle, go to Walkerton. They're announcing the charges in the Walkerton water scandal. And now, so Jan's husband severely got very sick from that. I didn't know at the time, but got to know buddies from Bruce County who I still hang out with today, some of my best friends. And they were impacted by that. They grew up in Walkerton, lived there at the time. Incredible stuff. Anyway, there's a little bit of a different trail down memory lane here as we think back on the places that we used to go for entertainment. We loved them. Now we miss them the most. Let's go next to Walter. Walter, good morning.
Yeah.
We're gonna get, there's Walter. Hi.
Thunder, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, that lady stole my thunder. I was going to say Lulu's, but used to have a great time Lulu's Day for years and years. And there's another place that, we used to go to all the time and had a lot of fun there. And I think I used to see you there off and on there, Mike. I think it was called the Dollhouse. And
what? I was on stage.
I don't think it was at the Dollhouse.
Right. Sorry. I was over at Huggies. Yeah. I forgot.
I didn't even think you'd remember that place.
Hey, listen, I'm a lifer in this town. I remember those places.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you my Dollhouse story in a minute.
Okay. Well, yeah, Lulu's, man, you used to see some kicking bands there, man, over the years. They were great. It was a great spot.
Absolutely, it was. Walter, good to hear from you today. Thanks for the call. I should have known that one would come up. Like I said, the first thing that came to mind for me was Eaton Putt as a kid. I just absolutely loved going there. And then our old buddy, producer Paulie, texted me. He said, how about the COE? Excellent example. I'd forgotten completely about that, which was another place I love to go every year. It signaled the end of summer, but boy, oh boy, did I like going to the Central Ontario exhibition. So if you don't know the place that Walter was talking about besides Lulu's, the Dollhouse and Huggies, was an adult dance club, if you will. The Dollhouse on one side, women on stage, Huggies next door, men on stage. Used to be right at Lancaster and Bridge Street. And of course, the city/region managed to expropriate that property to build the roundabout that's there. And that was the way they were able to rid themselves of another licensed place in the city for adult dance clubs. So because they wanted to limit the number. We used to have downtown Kitchener, for crying out loud. We can go back on and on about that. But, and as God is my witness, I will only ever tell you the truth. The only time I ever set foot in that particular gentleman's club was when I was working as a delivery driver and I had to make a delivery there. True story. I'm not making that up, not one bit. We'll take a quick break. Come back with more of your Flipside this morning. What place did you used to go for fun that's no longer there? And gosh darn it, do you miss it? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Asking you this morning about the places you used to go. Have a good time. They're no longer there, and you miss them. For me, Eaton Putt was the first one that came to mind. Marino sends an email to Mike at 570news.com. Herbsville Cartway. It wasn't too long ago we lost that beauty. Excellent example, Marino. Let's get back to the phones. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Andrew is with us on the flip side this morning. Good morning, Andrew.
How are you this morning?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
I miss the Matador on Hespeler Road, and I miss Ballinger's on, I guess, Concession or Coronation in Cambridge there. And after that, it became the Highlands, another great place to go.
Yeah. What was, were they music? What was there?
Yeah, they were music venues.
Yeah.
It was like a bar, concert venue, great place.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew, appreciate the call. Good to hear from you today. I really need to brush up on my Cambridge. I didn't get there enough, but Ballinger's for sure stood out to me. And then when he said it became the Highlands after that. All right, Daryl, we'll go to next. Daryl, you're on the flip side. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Excellent, thanks. How are you?
Good. Frankfurters and Mother's Pizza.
Listen, we could do
and a jug of root beer.
We could do we'll do it sometime soon, because restaurants alone could be a whole segment on this. Mother's Pizza is an excellent one. Good job by you, Daryl.
Okay. Good luck tonight.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you very much. Great to hear from you. Let's go next to Kyle. We're talking about the places on the flip side today, the places we used to go for fun that aren't there anymore, and we miss them. Kyle, what about you?
The Cornet. I'm just kidding.
Come on. Yeah, listen, we got that before from Walter. You guys are cut from the same cloth.
You're right. No, I grew up in Niagara, so it's a little bit different for me, but there's a place that I went to for my first beer when I turned legal drinking age. My dad took me to. It's called Slapshot Willie's. It's not there anymore, but it was down the road from us, and it was the place to go. Then I went there all the time, and the bartenders that used to work there treated me really well, like I was a younger brother and stuff. It was really cool. And then there's a rumor, but in Smithville, which is just the next town over, they said because that restaurant was called Touchdown Willie's, that there's a rumor that they were brothers, and the reason why they got two different restaurants is because there's a little bit of a rivalry. Whether it's true or not, I am not sure, but Touchdown Willie's is still there to this day. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that. Thanks a lot.
And sorry, where is it, Kyle? Is it where is
Beamsville? So Touchdown
Beamsville.
Willie's Touchdown Willie's is in Smithville, and Slapshot Willie's was in Beamsville.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but Slapshot is not there anymore. Yep. Thanks a lot, my friend.
All right, Kyle. Thanks for the call. Sorry if I missed the Beamsville reference the first time. I knew Kyle was Niagara region, but I didn't remember those places from around here. And another true story, since Kyle brought up the Coronet, fresh out of school, still not yet employed in the radio business. My buddy and I decided we were going to start our own business, because what else do you do? You either start a band, open a bar, or start a business. And it was in the building where the Coronet used to stand. Look at you stick around this town long enough, you'll get 6 degrees of separation from all the adult entertainment clubs, I guess. Bob is with us this morning. Let's go next to Bob on the flip side. Good morning, Bob.
Hey, eating putt was my favorite. Like, I remember the bumper cars there. I smacked my front teeth, and that was before they had padding in the steering wheel.
But, so lasting memory.
But the best place, okay, it's not an entertainment place, but when I was a kid, when my parents went shopping at Highway Market, it was like heaven in the toy department.
Absolutely. That's all right. That's entertainment for the kids.
Oh, that store was a great spot to play hide and go seek.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was, Bob. Well done, sir. Well done. Okay. Thanks for the call this morning. Take care. Phil is with us too. Phil, you're next on the flip side. Hello, Mr. Phil.
I won't talk about the gentlemen's clubs with the beverage room ballets, but I will talk about the the Blair campus of Conestoga College, Nicholson's Tavern.
Oh my gosh, I forgot all about Nicholson's.
And the thing with Conestoga College, Kitchener campus used to have pub nights on Thursdays, but I think because of the bylaw where the heck they were, they had to shut down by maybe 10 p.m. or 11. So everybody just went over to Nicholson's for their live entertainment. And then if you were going there during school time and you wanted to skip over there for lunch, You had to be there by 1:30 because the cook went home for lunch, and they made the best roast beef sandwiches and the jukebox and draft beer.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Phil. Good to hear from you today.
Okay, bye.
Take care. We're going to squeeze in one more before the break. Grant, what place did you used to go for fun and you miss it?
I think it's still there, but it's where my mom used to live in Dunnville. Just before you get into Dunnville, you get over the bridge, they would have a miniature golf place there. And then Market Square, they used to have a disco place called Phase 4 or something like that, right where the underground parking lot used to be. And I always thought, disco's going to be here for good. And my friend said, no, it's going to fade away.
Yeah, they all fade away. Grant, thanks for the call this morning. Memories from hometown of Dunnville before Grant joined us here in Kitchener. Got to run real quick on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I absolutely love those trips down memory lane. I really do. We got to get you to the 570 News Center for an update, but phone lines remain wide open. Our Talkback Hour is coming up, and in the next hour, we'll also award another pair of tickets to that Rangers playoff game tomorrow night when we're back home in Kitchener. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
It is your daily Talkback Hour here on the program, where we love to hear what's on your mind. Get it off your mind and onto the air with us here during the Talkback Hour. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I mean, yeah, I'm just not sure. I feel a little bit odd about it, if I'm being honest. The breaking news alert that came in just as Matt Hutchison was starting to tell us the new news, and that is Canada's decision to match U.S. auto tariffs, 25% auto tariffs with a levy on vehicles imported from the United States. But this announcement comes from, according to the news alert, Prime Minister Mark Carney. And I get it. I know that he is. I mean, in a campaign time, he should be Liberal leader, but he's also, because of the state of the world and the relationship with the United States, been forced to put on his prime ministerial robe. But we've never elected him. I just don't know how. I feel a little funny about that, is all. That this guy who won a leadership contest is making these decisions on behalf of our federal parliament. Somebody's got to, I suppose. Anyway, I don't know how you feel about that or about tariffs in general, as Donald Trump continues to just, I don't know, play taxing games with countries around the world. It's a very, very interesting time to be living in this country, on this continent right now. So there's that. And then I got into it a little bit this morning at the beginning of the show about, as unpopular as I understand it is, and the person running it is in the United States, the Department of Government Efficiency. I am not summarily opposed myself to the idea of having something like that happen on this side of the border. I think that taxes get a bad rap. I like to think of them as investments in my community. I'm not convinced. And I've heard way too many stories to convince me otherwise, that these investments are actually being made wisely. It seems to me, and I know it's an old saw, right? It's an easy piece of low-hanging fruit. Well, they don't spend our tax dollars wisely. How many stories do you have to hear before you start to believe it's true, right? There have been far too many examples of wasteful spending. And you look at the layers of bureaucracy, particularly federally now, I think we could do with a little bit more efficiency. It's just some ideas that are floating around between my ears, but we love to hear from you on the Talkback Hour. So let's get right to the phones. We're going to start with Daniel this afternoon. Good afternoon, Daniel. You're on the Talkback Hour.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. And you?
Good. So, good topic. I too think that, we need to have a government that cares for our money. And I'll give you an example. I met my MP, Brian May, when he was first elected a few years ago. And we talked about issues, and at the time, the Liberal government was saying, well, we'll spend a little bit, there'll be a little bit of a deficit. But when I talked to Mr. May about this, what struck me, and I still remember this, he said the government is entitled to increasing of spending every year. And that word entitled, it's government's right to spend money, not to care for taxpayers' money. And I tried to actually meet Mr. May last year, and you go to his office, and the office is locked, so you can't just walk in. And one of his staffers, after we talked, said, no, I'm not going to let you talk to Mr. May because you don't share his opinions, and he doesn't want to talk to you if you don't share his opinions. Which struck me as, wait, isn't he supposed to be my representative to the parliament as opposed to my local, overlord? So that's really, really frustrating. And for everyone, the deficit, we don't talk enough about the federal deficit. What could we do with $40 or $50 billion? We're talking about, helping seniors, having, better dental care plan, whatever, if we had that money. But first 40, 50 billion a year goes to debt financing. So if we didn't have the debt, we'd have so much more money or so much less tax.
Daniel, I appreciate the call. Listen, you're preaching to a choir on this one, and I'm glad you brought up the deficit because it's also interesting you mentioned when Brian May was elected a few years ago. I'm pretty sure he came in with the big red wave in 2015, right? Sunny days, sunny ways back then. Anyway, that made me think about that time when Justin Trudeau was first ushered into power, and we all remember, the budget will take care of itself, blah, blah. But the fiscal plan then projected, if I'm remembering correctly, $10 billion. And then it would start to come down. And last year, of course, we know 61 billion the deficit was. Now, we don't pay that much every year in debt financing, but it's many billions of dollars, which could build hospitals, which could expand dental care. We could do a lot of things with the money that we are simply using to service debt. And I've heard all of the arguments, and I get it, that, relative to our peers in the G7, et cetera, but at some point, somebody has got to tighten the reins on spending. It's not a free-for-all out there. Some measure of fiscal responsibility is imperative at this point, in my opinion. You might have a different opinion, and that's why we have the Talkback Hour, because unlike the story that Daniel shared, which I really hope is not true or misrepresented, your MP's office staff says he won't talk to you because you don't share his views. I want to learn from you on the Talkback Hour, so let's continue it here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Sorry. I was just filling in another clue on my crossword puzzle. I was telling you earlier today that off days on the road can be long days. You got to fill your time. I love me a good crossword puzzle, and I don't get enough time to just putter away on one. So I started doing that yesterday when I had some time after the show, and then I left it on my desk beside me here in the remote studios in Flint. And But I might start asking you for help with the clues as we continue on with the Talkback Hour today. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Jersey Bill is with us again. Good afternoon, Billy.
Hey, usually I don't call this frequently, but I can't resist calling you while you're sitting there in the USA.
I had a feeling that might have been the connection.
Yes, well, and actually I have something to say. I mean, this is it's just so disastrous what Mr. Trump is foisted now on the entire world. Forget what the effects on Canada, just the markets falling all over the place. And I've had this thought though, he's gotten the world's attention. If he really, really was as great a businessman and as great a thinker as he likes to pretend that he is, now would be the moment to call a general trade council, for a World Trade Council for all the countries of the world, and if there have been unequal tariffs being laid against the U.S., sit down and talk with these countries like China, like Europe, and even places like India, and figure out a way to actually have actual free trade. It would be the moment to do such a thing, but he doesn't. He seems to be so transactional, so much about retribution, and not really about solving a problem if a problem exists. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out why, now that he's got the world's attention, why he doesn't attempt to do something like that. Is it just beyond his comprehension?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I think I have to agree. And I just want to say one other thing. Yes, I understand that maybe Canada is too bureaucratic and things, but the last thing you want is somebody to go in there with the same meat cleaver type of instrument like Mr. Musk was using, and just destroy everything. I'm really worried about what's going to happen when we have our next ecological crisis or our climate or weather crisis, or heaven forbid we have a terrorist crisis. And suddenly, these people that were in place before, whatever their jobs were, are not going to be there to. But
isn't that the point, Billy? No, I get you. I'm not saying to wash away entire departments. I think there is room to decide if a government is involved in the right things. If that's part of the bloat, like there might be departments in a government that we don't need. But you said whatever their jobs are. I'm just not sure with all of this bureaucracy. Every one of those jobs, Billy, is necessary. We have hundreds of thousands of civil servants in this country.
And I understand, and that's why if you're going to do something like this, it can't be a spur of the moment revolutionary kind of activity. But and I understand if you give it to some sort of committee, if you do it in a more reasonable way, you may not get the results that you want. Certainly not right away. But I think you'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, decide which level of government should be responsible for which activity. Once again, think and maybe now all somebody has to do is threaten to do something like that, and maybe it would get the attention of all levels of government, and all levels of government would maybe work better together to ensure that the normal functioning of government goes forward without a great deal of disruption.
Billy, appreciate the call and the conversation on that, even though we might see it a little bit differently. I think you're on to something there. And I think this would be work well worth doing. You don't have to come in with, a hatchet, but we could do some surgical work. Spend the time. That would be a very wise investment, in my opinion. Let's go next on the Talkback Hour to Jim. Good afternoon, Jim.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mike. What I just wanted to talk about is I think Poilievre is kind of blowing this election. Like, he should have had this hands down. The Liberal government has had one of the worst. I think it's the lowest in the G7 countries of the last year, and our happiness scales went down so much. But the thing I think that we have to focus on is having a merit-based society rather than DEI, and we also have to. There's something that Trump is doing that's good, which is cutting down the cost of the government. I agree with that, and having a merit-based society. So I just wish that Polyev would start talking about those things. I know it's hard to we want to distance ourselves from Trump, but, there's some things that he's doing good, but the tariffs, obviously, and, not being very friendly towards the world governments is not a good thing, I don't think.
All right,
we have
Jim.
to still work in cooperation with them. What do you think?
I appreciate the call, and I think lots of things about that. Yes, the economic chaos that Donald Trump is creating is beyond my comprehension. I don't know why anybody would intentionally do this, but here we are. And just on your point about what you like to see Donald Trump doing, I don't want to conflate the idea of DEI somehow, so diversity, equity, and inclusion practices somehow leading to people earning jobs that they have not earned on their own merit. All DEI intends to do is open up opportunities to more people, making sure we're not letting some of those qualified people fall through the cracks. But I'm with you on a meritocracy. I absolutely am. And your question about Pierre Poilievre is an excellent one. I was just thinking of that this morning. He had a 20-plus point lead in the polls, and now we find ourselves in an election campaign, and it's a darn close race, isn't it? It's your Talkback Hour on the Mike Farwell Show. We continue 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Talkback Hour is our chance to hear from you, so let's do more of that. Getting right back to the phones, Laura joins us this afternoon. Good afternoon, Laura. You're on the Talkback Hour.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. I agree that I think on mostly the provincial and the federal level, we need to maybe get our spending under control. There's probably lots of opportunity for reductions there, whether it's personnel or spending or whatever. But it's hard because I feel like taxpayers, we don't want to pay more taxes, but we want all these services, and you can't do both. So it's either we're paying more or we're cutting. It drives me crazy when particularly conservatives get in office and they want it, or like you look in the States, Republicans, they get in and they just cut taxes without doing the hard work of cutting the services that go with it. But then when you try to participate, like I try to usually engage things here locally or whatever, half the time the bureaucrats and I guess possibly the politicians have set it up in such a way that it's really restrictive on what you can give feedback on as to whether or not you want your taxpayer dollars to go to those things. And I almost wonder, could we have something like the CAA, like road thing, which actually results sometimes in some terrible roads getting improved? Could some third-party group put out, okay, what do you want to see tax dollars, like where could tax dollars be saved? Have the, Joe Blow put in suggestions and have people vote on it. And maybe that would give us some more transparency and a bigger voice with our different levels of government about where we want them to start looking for these savings, because it just sort of feels like it's these one-off issues that end up getting dealt with as opposed to looking at a more holistic opportunity for saving our tax money.
Laura, that's really well said. I appreciate the call. I think you speak for many of us, and I'd be supportive of an idea like this. Again, it would be some pretty heavy lifting, but why not a conversation about what it is that we want or need government to do? And maybe we'd find out that it's attempting to do some things now that it need not do, and we can streamline it that way, making sure we get the services that we really need and or want. Talkback Hour continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a very busy Talkback Hour today. And yes, you will still get a chance to win a pair of tickets to tomorrow night's Rangers game back home at the Memorial Auditorium. We'll do that before we sign off today at 1. But right back to the phones now we go. Philip is with us on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon, Philip.
Good afternoon on this beautiful sunny day. Fiscal responsibility. People talk about, like you're talking about the state, sometimes it's a reaction to something negative or anger thing, like we got to cut. I think so often so often it's a message. When we see what happens with spending, we see Auditor General reports come out. Why did we spend on this? But there's also the small messages, like when we send a full entourage to Britain for something happening there, like with the Queen's funeral. Why do so many people have to go? Why isn't it the leader of the country and the Governor General and the spouse? Why isn't it 6 people? Why is it an entourage? When we have a conference out in West, why do so many people from local government have to go? In a lot of businesses, one person goes and reports back to everybody else in the department. You don't send an entire entourage. So when we look at the tight finances of a lot of families saying, how do we make ends meet? And you got government saying, oh, we sympathize and, we're working hard for the working family. But then you turn around and you have this excessive waste that auditor generals and people have talked about for years, stuff like the Senate, where $175 million to people in Kitchener-Waterloo region, $175 million is a lot of money. So if you're going to talk small or talk big, then start doing things and also set a role model,
Philip, I really appreciate that call and that sentiment. And this is the thing. I think that bureaucracies get numbed to the numbers. $175 million does sound like a lot of money to people here in the region of Waterloo. Just like a $140,000 raise, not salary, raise on one's salary. That's the raise that John Tibbetts just got as president of Conestoga College. Those are big numbers to us. I think the people who are being awarded those raises or spending those millions don't have the same understanding of it or perspective on it. Terry is next on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon, Terry.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. I only caught bits of the last segment you had. The Parkway Drive-In was the one by where Toys R Us was.
Yes, not the Sunset. Sunset was in Preston.
Was
Thank you.
Yeah, on Eagle Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, so you never went into those strip clubs? You never sat at Pervert's Row or what?
Honest to goodness, I would never tell you a lie, Terry.
Okay.
It just wasn't my thing. It just wasn't my thing. I had lots of fun growing up, but I didn't. That wasn't part of my fun.
Yeah, I hear you. It kind of wears off after a while. Hey, Mike, about these tariff things. Over the last 30 years, a lot of these auto manufacturers, they moved out of Canada. There's not much left in Canada in terms of building cars anymore. They used to have plants in Quebec. They used to have plants in Scarborough. GM used to have a van plant in Scarborough. That's gone. I mean, even
I wouldn't say not much left. I mean, you think of Toyota, Honda, they've got significant.
It is. But compared to what it used to be, I mean, during the auto pack years, we had quite a bit more here. I mean, there's still a few, and even the two Toyota plants, those are relatively newer plants, and Honda, they were built in the late 80s. But the one that's going to be affected most are the cars built in Mexico. Like, I mean, look at all the plants that have surfaced down there in the last 30 years. Like, there was nothing before that. I mean, they're the ones that are going to be suffering the most. Even Toyota built a plant down there about 5 years ago. They were going to build the Corollas there, but they decided not to and moved the Corolla production to Mississippi, and they ended up building the Tacoma pickup truck in Mexico. That's not as big a seller as the Corolla was, but it's still going to affect them. So, yeah, it's still going to hurt, but I'm just saying, compared to what it could have been years ago, it's going to be not as bad. Anyway, Mike, thanks for listening, right. And I'm looking forward to this. It looks like it's going to be Windsor and Kitchener in the second round. I mean, considering Kitchener
slow down.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, it should be a good series. Those teams actually match up pretty well, like evenly. Anyway, have a good day, Mike, and let's go Rangers tonight.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate the call. Windsor leads its series over the Sioux 3-1. Rangers would like to get into that 3-1 position. They need to win tonight in Flint in order to do that. Pre-game, 6:30 right here on 570 News Radio. And just to Terry's point, I like the kind of glass half full or silver lining. Not as bad as it could have been, not as bad as the impact it will be on Mexico, but it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt here when as these tariffs come into play. So let's not minimize that impact for sure. Let's go next to Ernie on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon, Ernie.
Hey, Mike. Just going back to Jersey Builder and his settlements with, should we be careful? Yeah, we don't need to obviously go in with a hatchet. But just reporting too, what like Tom Korski's segment there on the amount of money that we're spending, that for one, I'm pretty sure when people heard that segment, they were like, this is going on in Canada, this is happening here. And I sent you a little source there clip too. Under Trudeau, the civil service has jumped by over 43% to
I know it's ridiculous. That's what got me all fired up, Ernie. I've been following this for a while, and I can't believe it happens right under our eyes.
So this is what I want to ask you about that. So yeah, we're talking like we're obviously a little upset, and we discourage that number. It's way too high. But if you're in power, and just like that segment before, if you're paying journalists, and the Liberal gets to pick what journalists get this $30,000 grant to follow the election, what is your incentive to cut any of these programs, Mike? What if you could decide where that money goes, who you're paying? Why would they even want to look at cutting if they can control the narrative and they decide where that money goes if it's going to benefit them?
Well, look, first of all, while the civil service has grown dramatically under Justin Trudeau, it also grew under Stephen Harper. So let's just be clear on that point. And I don't know, Ernie, I think this media subsidy is very much misunderstood. I promise you, I have never received one nickel, not one shiny nickel of government funding to do my job. So right. I don't, so I think there's a real misunderstanding there. I get it. And I wish, to be honest with you, that there had been nothing provided by way of subsidy to media, because it leads to the even illusion or appearance of conflict, which, there isn't. And so the optics are bad on it. But I do believe we need to invest in journalism. Boy, oh boy. I'm not saying a government has to be making those investments, but we got to figure out, because if we lose journalism, we're in a whole heap of trouble.
Right. I'm just saying that the optics and everything, it's just, there's so many people skeptical right now, and you've seen it more than ever as well, too.
Yep. I agree. I hear you.
And it's just something I wish could be done better. But there needs to be more transparency about those funds, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. 100% there does. Okay, Ernie, appreciate the call. Always good to hear from you on the Talkback Hour, which continues here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a busy Talkback Hour today. Right back into it we go on the phone lines with Greg. Greg, good afternoon. You're on Talkback.
Hi, Mike. Hoping for a quick crash course on deficit, because most people probably know these answers, but I don't. But who does Canada owe? Other countries?
Yes.
Okay, and is that from like someone to say with their credit card spending more than they should have, or is it all interest? And was there ever not a deficit?
Oh, I'm sure at some point, yes, there had to have been. I can't go back that far in history, but yes, I would presume at some point we started borrowing to meet our needs.
Okay, and then are they still borrowing, and countries are still giving?
Hell yeah, they're still borrowing. Yes, and our credit rating is good. That's why we keep borrowing.
So it's not all interest. Okay, and then I just wondered if, down on a consumer level, there's such a thing as a consumer proposal. You throw your hands up and say, okay, and you negotiate, make a deal for partial settlement. Does anybody ever negotiate at a country level saying, okay, we've seen that this seems to be insurmountable. We'd like to do more for our own people, kind of thing. And any chance, can you cut us some slack? Does any concept like that exist at that level, or is it just simply these countries are fine? Here, have some more, but yeah, interest, and then who cares?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's been a country that's declared bankruptcy yet, but I stand to be corrected on that. I know there was a big mess in Greece a decade or more ago, but the long and the short of it is, Greg, that's where I worry we get to. You can only spend so much. You can only print so much money before worse things start happening. So I would just like to see some control on the deficits for sure.
Yeah, I'm not saying right to bankruptcy, but just simply, okay, here, sit down, I don't know, say they owe Saudi Arabia, for example, and just sit down and say, okay, here, any chance you can, knock that down to 60%, make it manageable for us, kind of thing. And, because if simply, tax dollars or whatever else they're paying whatever they can with isn't getting it done, is there anybody out there thinking, well, hang on, what else can we try? Just like there's other options for consumers.
No, I know what you're coming at where you're coming from on that. I don't have the expertise to answer that exactly. I'm sorry, I don't. But I appreciate the call. And you know what? It's a good reminder to me to get back to school and learn some economics, macro and micro. Okay. Mary is next with us on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon, Mary.
Good afternoon, Mike. You seem so far away.
I am far away, but I'm right here. Mary, I'm right in your ears.
Yes. Well,
yes.
What a difference a day makes. The mess we had yesterday here, and now
it's nonsense.
It's all
nonsense, Mary. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
Well, anyway,
what are we doing in this
that's not
godforsaken
really why
country?
I called.
Okay.
One of the suggestions from one of the listeners was getting the like your local MP or MPP together for a meeting and to tell them what's important to us and this and that. I tried to talk to Mike Harris at least 4 times. Never, ever had a call back. So how do you think you're going to get these guys together if they're not going to even talk to you on the phone?
Well, they might talk to each other.
Well,
they just might not talk to. I don't know.
Talk to me. They don't know what I'm about. What I want fixed.
I get you. I get you, Mary.
I get you. But the other thing is, all these 10,000 managers. The Trudeau Liberal government has bloated the number of people, bureaucracy.
Absolutely. 43%. Ernie just told us that in the last segment.
Yeah, well, you told me about and
I did.
On the 10,000 and 6 figures and this and that, which is ridiculous. But now I worked with a woman whose husband worked in the government. I don't know what he was doing. And this is how it goes. You have to spend your budget, whether you need it or not.
I know.
You won't get a raise.
Yep.
So if you just put new carpet in and new furniture, no. Rip it up, throw it out. Because if you don't spend that money, you won't get a raise.
Well, you won't. Yeah. Yes, I've heard those same stories, Mary. I know.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Go Rangers, go!
Thanks, Mary. Good to hear from you today. That's a great reminder and a great setup because as we're coming up on the end of our Talkback Hour, I still have tickets. I have 2 tickets to tomorrow's Kitchener Rangers game. We're going to be coming back home either up 3-1, which is what I think will be, or tied 2-2. Either way, there's a game tomorrow night at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, and I will give you the tickets if you can answer my Rangers playoff trivia question. Are you up for it? Put on your thinking cap. We need a Ranger fan to win these tickets to tomorrow's game, okay? You know the numbers, 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Rangers playoff trivia coming up. Your chance to win tickets to Friday's game here on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I do still have a pair of tickets to give away to tomorrow's Kitchener Rangers game at the Memorial Auditorium. Game 5 could be the clinching game for the Kitchener Rangers if they can take care of business tonight. You have to answer my Rangers playoff trivia question, okay? You answer the question, I give you the tickets. And Norma is on the line with us to try for those tickets. Norma, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Mike.
All right, here comes your question, Norma. Rangers playoff trivia. Kitchener. I got faith in you. Kitchener this is super easy. Kitchener is up 2-1 in the series. They won the first game in overtime. Who scored the overtime winning goal for the Rangers in game 1 of this series?
Oh, gosh.
Come on, Norma. Norma.
Oh boy. Another guess. Darn it. Trent Swift.
Oh, nice try, Norma. I'm sorry it was not Trent Swick. Thank you for playing along. I thought I had a pretty easy one here. Okay, well, maybe Barry knows the answer. Barry is with us to play Rangers playoff trivia. Pair of tickets for tomorrow night's game is on the line. Barry, good afternoon. Barry?
Yes.
Well, Barry, are you there, Barry? I can barely hear you.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Attaboy. Barry, did you hear my question?
Yes. The goal scorer was Luca Rubano.
Attaboy. Barry, you're a good guy. You're a Ranger fan, and you just got yourself 2 tickets to tomorrow night's game in Kitchener. Way to go, buddy.
Well, thank you very much.
You are very welcome, sir. Hang on the line. Devin's going to take down your info, hook you up with those tickets, okay? Great. Okay. And you know what? I'm going to squeeze in one more call, talk back before we go, because Rudy has been waiting. Let's go to Rudy and get him on the Talkback Hour. Rudy, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Great drive home right now. Much better than yesterday. But I just like to say, Mary that called before, she's wondering why she can't talk to that guy. I believe he's a conservative. You're in the election. The conservatives running for election are not allowed to talk to anybody.
But the election's
Mary
over.
put that through, and it's been like that even with other the election before, too. They're not allowed to talk to anybody.
I get it, Rudy. I appreciate. I know. I hear you. I got to run because I'm running out of time, but I appreciate the call. In fairness, Mary was talking about her MPP who's been in office for 4 years already. So there should be plenty of time outside of campaign time to talk to your constituents. This is the problem, though, in my opinion, with the upper levels of government, right? The MPPs and the MPs, they do represent the community. They represent your interests at Queen's Park or in Ottawa, but they're nowhere near as accessible, most of them, as your local councillors are. And that's just the way it goes in politics. I got to go. I got to make way for Rob Snow. And Now You Know, coming up until 3 this afternoon. And then Paul Fixter and I will be back here in Flint, 6:30 pregame show. Rangers, Firebirds, Game 4. Let's go, you Rangers. Thanks to Devin Robertson for managing this show so well from afar. My name is Mike Farwell. Talk to you tonight from the rink. Bye for now.